Jake Morrison stared out the window of the spaceship Horizon's Edge and felt his stomach turn. The stars looked different here, far from Earth. He had been in space for 3 months now, but he still was not used to it. As the ship's communications officer, Jake spent most of his time listening to radio signals and translating messages. Today was different, though. Today they would meet aliens for the first time. Captain Lisa Bennett walked into the communications room. She looked nervous, which made Jake feel worse. Captain Bennett never looked nervous. "Are you ready for this, Jake?" she asked. "I think so," Jake said. "The translation software is working well. I can understand their basic language now." "Good. Remember, this is the most important day in human history. We need to make a good first impression." Jake nodded. Through his headphones, he could hear the alien voices getting stronger. The Zephyrians were close now. Their home planet filled the view screen like a blue and silver jewel. Strange crystal towers reached up from the surface into space itself. Dr. Amy Foster joined them at the window. She was the ship's expert on alien life. "Look at those structures," she said with wonder in her voice. "They built their cities to connect the planet with space. Amazing." "Incoming message," Jake said, putting his hand to his headphone. "They are giving us permission to dock with their space station." The space station was huge. It looked like a giant crystal flower floating in space. As their ship got closer, Jake could see smaller ships moving around it like busy insects. The Zephyrian ships were beautiful, made of what looked like living crystal that changed colors as they moved. "First contact in 30 minutes, Captain Bennett announced over the ship's speakers. "All crew members to stations." Jake checked his equipment one more time. The universal translator was working perfectly. The cultural briefing files were ready. He had studied Zephyrian customs for weeks. He knew he should bow low when meeting them. He knew he should not look directly at their royal family. He knew their society was very formal and proper. What he did not know was how beautiful they would be. The docking was smooth. Jake followed Captain Bennett, Dr. Foster, and cultural expert Ben Parker through the airlock. The Zephyrian station was incredible inside. The walls seemed to be made of living light. Soft music played from everywhere and nowhere. The air smelled like flowers after rain. A group of Zephyrians waited for them in a large round room. They were tall and thin, with skin that looked like blue crystal. Their faces were almost human but more perfect. Their eyes were large and purple. When they moved, their skin changed colors like oil on water. "Welcome to Zephyr Prime," said the tallest alien. His voice sounded like wind chimes. "I am Ambassador Veltar. We greet you in peace." Captain Bennett stepped forward and bowed as they had practiced. "We are honored to be here. I am Captain Lisa Bennett of Earth." Jake tried to focus on his job. He was supposed to record everything and help with translation if needed. But his eyes kept moving to one particular Zephyrian. She stood slightly apart from the others, and she was the most beautiful being he had ever seen. Her skin was a lighter blue than the others, and it sparkled like starlight. Her hair floated around her head like she was underwater. She wore robes that seemed to be made of liquid silver. The formal introductions continued. Jake learned that the beautiful alien was Princess Arieth, the youngest daughter of the Zephyrian Emperor. She would be their guide during the cultural exchange. "Princess Arieth will show you our ways," Ambassador Veltar explained. "She has studied your species and speaks your language well." When Princess Arieth stepped forward, Jake felt his breath catch. She moved like music made into a person. Her purple eyes seemed to hold all the wisdom of the stars. "I welcome you to our home," she said. Her voice was soft but clear. "I hope you will find peace here." The group began to move through the station. Princess Arieth walked beside Captain Bennett, explaining different areas they passed. Jake followed behind, trying to listen to the important information, but he found himself watching the princess instead. The way she gestured with her hands, the way her skin shifted from blue to purple when she was excited about something, the way she smiled when Dr. Foster asked questions about their technology. They entered a great hall with windows that showed the planet below. The view was breathtaking. Cities of crystal spread across continents like networks of light, but Jake was not looking at the planet. He was looking at Princess Arieth as she pointed out different landmarks. The princess seemed to sense his gaze. She turned suddenly and looked directly at him. For a moment, time stopped. Her purple eyes met his brown ones across the space between them. Jake felt heat rise in his face. He had been caught staring. Princess Arieth excused herself from the group and walked over to Jake. The other Zephyrians looked surprised. Apparently this was not normal behavior for a princess. "You are the communications officer," she said. It was not a question. "Yes, Your Highness," Jake managed to say. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. She studied his face with curiosity. Her skin was shifting through different shades of blue and purple. Jake wondered what that meant. "You have been watching me," she said calmly. Jake felt panic. Had he broken some alien custom? Was he about to cause an interplanetary incident? He looked around. Captain Bennett was deep in conversation with Ambassador Veltar. Dr. Foster was examining some kind of crystal display. No one else had noticed yet. I apologize if I've offended you," Jake said quickly. "I did not mean to be rude." Princess Arieth tilted her head like a bird studying something interesting. "Why were you staring at me?" The question was direct and honest. Jake realized that lying would be worse than the truth. He took a deep breath. "Because you are gorgeous," he said simply. The princess's skin flashed bright silver for just a moment. Around them, the other Zephyrians suddenly went very quiet. Jake realized that everyone had heard his words. Ambassador Veltar made a sound like breaking glass. Captain Bennett's face went pale. Ben Parker looked like he wanted to disappear. Dr. Foster's mouth hung open, but Princess Arieth smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. "That," she said, "is the most honest thing anyone has said to me in years." The silence in the great hall felt heavy. Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Captain Bennett looked like she might be sick. Ambassador Veltar's skin had turned a dark red color, which Jake guessed was not good. "Princess," Ambassador Veltar said in a tight voice, "perhaps we should continue the tour." But Princess Arieth did not move away from Jake. Instead, she stepped closer. Her purple eyes studied his face with interest. "Tell me," she said to Jake, ignoring everyone else, "do all humans speak so directly?" Jake said, feeling sweat on his forehead. "Some do. I guess I do." "Interesting." The princess's skin shifted to a lighter blue. "In our culture, such words between strangers are considered very rude. Especially to royalty." Jake's heart sank. "I really am sorry, Your Highness. I did not know. But," Princess Arieth continued, "I find it refreshing. No one ever tells me what they really think. They only say what they believe I want to hear." Ambassador Veltar stepped forward. "Princess, perhaps we should discuss this later. Our guests need to complete their formal welcome." Princess Arieth looked at the ambassador for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried authority that Jake had not heard before. "Ambassador Veltar, I request permission to serve as personal guide to Communications Officer Morrison during his stay. I believe this will help our cultural exchange." The request shocked everyone. Captain Bennett's eyes went wide. Dr. Foster whispered something to Ben Parker. The other Zephyrians began talking quietly among themselves in their own language. "Princess," Ambassador Veltar said carefully, "that would be highly unusual." "Many things about this first contact are unusual," she replied. "I think unusual times call for unusual approaches." Jake watched this exchange with growing worry. He was causing problems already, and they had only been here for an hour. "Your Highness," he said quietly, "I do not want to cause trouble. Maybe it would be better if someone else guides me." Princess Arieth turned back to him. "Do you want someone else to guide you?" The honest answer was no. Jake wanted to spend more time with this amazing alien princess, but the smart answer was yes to avoid diplomatic problems. "I would be honored to have you as my guide," Jake said, choosing honesty again, "but only if it will not cause problems for you or your people." The princess smiled again, bigger this time. Her skin brightened to an almost white-blue color. "Then it is decided," she said. "Ambassador Veltar, please arrange for Officer Morrison to have quarters near the cultural district. I will begin his orientation tomorrow." Ambassador Veltar looked like he wanted to argue, but he only bowed. "As you wish, Princess." The rest of the welcome ceremony passed in a blur. Jake tried to focus on the important information about trade agreements and cultural exchanges. But he kept thinking about the princess and wondering what he had gotten himself into. Later, in his assigned quarters, Jake sat on his bed and looked around the room. Everything was made of the same crystal material as the rest of the station. The walls glowed softly with their own light. The bed was more comfortable than anything he had ever felt. Through his window, he could see the planet below, its crystal cities twinkling like stars. Captain Bennett knocked on his door. When he opened it, she came in with a serious expression. "Jake, we need to talk," she said. "I know. I messed up. I am sorry, Captain. Captain Bennett sat down in one of the crystal chairs. Actually, I'm not sure you did mess up. The princess seems genuinely interested in our culture, and her request to guide you personally could be very valuable for our mission. Jake felt relieved. So I am not in trouble? Not yet, Captain Bennett said with a small smile. But Jake, you need to be very careful. This princess is not just any alien. She is royalty in a very formal society. One wrong move could damage relations between our species. I understand, Captain. Do you? Because I'm not sure you realize what just happened in there. When she defended your honesty and requested to be your guide, she was making a political statement. She was saying that she values human directness over Zephyrian formality. That could make her enemies among her own people. Jake had not thought about that. Should I tell her I changed my mind? No, the damage is already done if there is any damage. Now we need to make the best of it. Learn everything you can about their culture. But remember, you represent all of humanity here. After Captain Bennett left, Jake tried to sleep, but his mind kept racing. Tomorrow he would spend the day with Princess Arieth. He wondered what she would show him. He wondered what she thought about humans. He wondered if she really found his honesty refreshing, or if she was just being polite. The next morning, Jake woke up to soft music playing in his room. It was coming from the walls themselves. A gentle voice spoke in perfect English. Good morning, Officer Morrison. Princess Arieth will meet you in the Garden District in 1 hour. Please follow the blue lights in the corridor to find your way. Jake showered and put on his best uniform. When he stepped into the corridor, small blue lights appeared in the floor, leading him forward. The station was huge, but the lights made it easy to navigate. The Garden District was nothing like Jake expected. Instead of plants, there were structures that looked like living crystal trees. They moved gently as if blown by wind, even though there was no wind in the enclosed space. The air smelled like flowers, but the scents kept changing as he walked. Princess Arieth stood near a fountain that flowed upward instead of down. The water hung in the air like floating diamonds before slowly drifting back down. She wore simpler clothes today, but she was still the most beautiful being Jake had ever seen. Good morning, Jake, she said. May I call you Jake? Of course, Your Highness. Then you must call me Arya. We will be spending much time together. Formal titles will become tiresome. Jake was not sure if that was appropriate, but he nodded. Good morning, Arya. She smiled at the sound of her name in his voice. Much better. Now tell me, what would you like to learn about my people? Everything, Jake said without thinking. Then he felt embarrassed. I mean, whatever you think is important. Everything is a good answer, Arya said. I like that you want to understand us completely. Most visitors only want to see our technology or our art. They do not care about how we think or feel. They began walking through the garden. Arya explained that the crystal trees were actually living beings that fed on light and sound. The music in the air was their way of communicating with each other. Are they intelligent? Jake asked. In their own way, yes. They remember things. They learn. They even have personalities. This one here is very curious about you. Jake looked at the tree Arya was pointing to. It was leaning toward him, its crystal branches swaying gently. How can you tell? Watch, Arya said. She made a complex hand gesture toward the tree. The tree responded by changing colors from blue to green to gold. I told it you are a friend. Now it is happy. Jake was amazed. Your people can talk to them? Some of us can. It requires patience and practice, and honesty. They can sense when someone is lying or hiding their true feelings. Jake wondered if that was why Arya had liked his honest answer yesterday. Maybe honesty was more important in Zephyrian culture than he had realized. They spent the morning exploring different parts of the Garden District. Arya showed him crystal flowers that sang when touched, pools of water that showed images from other worlds, and structures that changed shape based on the emotions of people nearby. Your people created all this? Jake asked. We grew it, Arya corrected. We do not build things the way humans do. We convince materials to become what we need them to be. It takes longer, but the results are more beautiful and they last much longer. As they walked, Jake noticed that other Zephyrians kept staring at them. Some looked curious. Others looked disapproving. One group of what looked like guards followed them at a distance. Are we causing problems? Jake asked quietly. Arya followed his gaze to the guards. Perhaps, but good problems. My people need to learn that change is not always dangerous. You humans have much to teach us about adapting to new situations. What do you mean? We Zephyrians are very old as a species. We have had the same government, the same customs, the same ways of thinking for thousands of years. It has made us stable but also rigid. When we first received your radio signals from Earth, many of my people wanted to ignore them. They were afraid that contact with humans would change us. And you disagreed? I believed that change could make us stronger. I studied your history, your languages, your art. I learned that humans are incredibly adaptable. You face problems by finding new solutions, not by repeating old ones. They stopped at a viewing area that looked out at the planet below. Jake could see the crystal cities more clearly now. They were beautiful, but they all looked very similar. Your cities, Jake said. They all have the same design. Yes, we perfected the design long ago, so we use it everywhere. Efficient, but perhaps not very creative. Jake thought about Earth. With its thousands of different architectural styles, each one adapted to local conditions and cultures. On Earth, every city looks different, he said. Sometimes even neighborhoods in the same city look completely different. That sounds chaotic, Arya said. But her tone was curious rather than critical. Sometimes it is, but it is also exciting. You never know what you will find around the next corner. Arya was quiet for a moment. Jake and Arya had been exploring the station together for 5 days. Each day, Jake learned more about Zephyrian culture, and Arya asked endless questions about human life. She was especially fascinated by human music, which was very different from the gentle sounds that Zephyrians created. Jake was showing her how to use his portable music player when alarm sounds began echoing through the station. The crystal walls flashed red, and Zephyrian voices spoke rapidly in their own language over the communication system. What is happening? Jake asked. Arya's skin had turned pale blue, almost white. Emergency alert! Something is approaching our system. They hurried to the main command center. Captain Bennett and Dr. Foster were already there, along with Ambassador Veltar and several Zephyrian officers. On the main screen, Jake could see space filled with dark objects moving toward them. How many ships? Captain Bennett asked. Our sensors count 300 vessels, answered a Zephyrian officer. They are unlike any design in our records. Jake studied the ships on the screen. They were black and angular, with no smooth curves like Zephyrian or human ships. They looked wrong somehow, like machines built by other machines with no thought for beauty or comfort. Have you tried to communicate with them? Dr. Foster asked. Yes, Ambassador Veltar replied. They do not respond to any signals. They simply continue toward our planet. General Corthon, the head of Zephyrian military forces, stepped forward. His skin was dark red with anger or fear. These ships matched descriptions from old warnings we received from distant sectors. They are called Void Reapers. Void Reapers? Captain Bennett asked. Machine intelligences that consume organic worlds, General Corthon explained. They break down all living matter and use it to build more machines. Entire civilizations have been lost to them. Jake felt cold fear in his stomach. How long until they reach the planet? 6 hours at their current speed, the sensor officer reported. General Corthon turned to his staff. Prepare all defense fleets. We will meet them at the outer system and destroy them before they can reach our world. General, Arya said, stepping forward. Perhaps we should consider other options. The humans might have ideas that could help. General Corthon looked at Arya with barely hidden irritation. Princess, with respect, these aliens know nothing about our military capabilities. This is a matter for Zephyrian forces. But humans have experience with asymmetric warfare, Jake said, remembering his military history classes, fighting enemies with different capabilities and tactics. We have the most advanced fleet in this sector, General Corthon said dismissively. Our ships are faster and our weapons more powerful than anything these machines can produce. Captain Bennett stepped forward. General, on Earth we learned that advanced technology is not always enough. Sometimes the enemy has advantages you do not expect, such as machine intelligence can process information and react much faster than organic minds, Dr. Foster explained. They can coordinate thousands of ships perfectly and adapt their tactics in real time. General Corthon's skin darkened further. Our pilots are trained for centuries. Our formations have been perfected over millennia. These machines will not stand against Zephyrian discipline. Jake exchanged a worried look with Captain Bennett. The general seemed very confident, but Jake had studied enough military disasters to know that overconfidence was dangerous. General, Arya said, what if the humans observe our battle preparations? They might see things we miss. Absolutely not. Military secrets cannot be shared with aliens, even allied ones. Ambassador Veltar spoke up. Perhaps a compromise. The humans could observe from the command center, but not participate directly. After some discussion, General Corthan agreed. Jake, Captain Bennett, and Dr. Foster were given positions in the observation area of the command center. Over the next 4 hours, Jake watched the Zephyrian fleet assemble. It was impressive. Hundreds of beautiful crystal ships forming perfect geometric patterns. Each ship glowed with internal light, and they moved together like dancers in a ballet. Their formation is beautiful, Dr. Foster whispered to Jake. Too beautiful, Jake whispered back. Look how predictable it is. Every ship knows exactly where every other ship will be. Captain Bennett nodded grimly. And if we can predict it, so can the machines. The first battle began at the edge of the solar system. Jake watched on the tactical display as the Zephyrian fleet engaged the Void Reapers in a classic formation attack. The Zephyrian ships fired their energy weapons in coordinated volleys, creating walls of destructive force. At first, it seemed to work. Several Void Reaper ships were destroyed in the opening minutes. General Corthan smiled with satisfaction. You see, he said to the human observers, disciplined tactics defeat chaos every time. But Jake noticed something troubling on the display. The remaining Void Reaper ships were changing their formation. They had analyzed the Zephyrian attack pattern and were adapting to it. General, Jake said urgently, the machines are learning your tactics. Impossible. Our formations are too complex for simple machines to understand. Even as he spoke, the tactical display showed the Void Reapers beginning a counterattack. They had spread out in an irregular pattern that made it difficult for the Zephyrian ships to target them effectively. Worse, they seemed to predict where the Zephyrian ships would move next. They are reading our navigation computers, one of the Zephyrian officers reported with shock. They know where our ships will be before our pilots do. The beautiful Zephyrian formation began to fall apart. Ships that relied on being in specific positions relative to each other found themselves isolated and vulnerable. The Void Reapers attacked like wolves, cutting off individual ships and destroying them. Fall back to defensive positions around the planet, General Corthan ordered, but the retreat was even worse. The Void Reapers had learned the Zephyrian tactical doctrine completely. They knew how Zephyrian ships would retreat, how they would regroup, how they would defend. Every move the Zephyrians made was anticipated and countered. We are losing 30% of our ships, the tactical officer reported. Jake could not stay quiet any longer. General, you need to change your tactics completely. Do something the machines cannot predict. We do not have other tactics, General Corthan said bitterly. This is how Zephyrians fight. This is how we have always fought. Then you need to fight like someone else, Captain Bennett said. Fight like humans. Impossible. Our ships are designed for our tactics. Our pilots are trained for our methods. Arya had been listening to this exchange with growing alarm. General, if our current approach is failing, should we not try alternatives? What alternatives, Princess? These humans know nothing about space combat. Maybe not about Zephyrian space combat, Jake said. But we know about fighting enemies who are stronger, faster, and better equipped than we are. How? Jake thought quickly. On Earth, we learned that when you cannot defeat an enemy with strength, you defeat them with unpredictability. You make choices that even you do not fully understand, because if you do not understand your own plan, neither can your enemy. Dr. Foster nodded. Humans have always succeeded by adapting quickly and trying new approaches. Sometimes we try things that seem crazy, just because they might work. That sounds like chaos, General Corthan said. Sometimes chaos is exactly what you need, Captain Bennett replied. On the tactical display, more Zephyrian ships were being destroyed. The Void Reapers were now only 2 hours from the planet itself. Arya stepped forward. General, I request permission to try something different. Princess, you are not a military officer. No, but I have been studying human tactics with Jake, and I am a qualified pilot. Absolutely not. I will not risk the Emperor's daughter in battle. You are already risking the Emperor's world, Arya shot back, and every Zephyrian life on it. The argument was interrupted by another tactical report. General, the outer defense grid has fallen. Enemy ships will reach planetary orbit in 90 minutes. General Corthan looked at the display with desperation. His perfect formations were broken. His disciplined tactics had failed. The most advanced fleet in the sector was being systematically destroyed by enemies that learned faster than they could adapt. Jake saw the moment when the general's certainty cracked. "What do you propose?" he asked quietly. "Let me work with some of your pilots," Jake said. "Not to command them, but to teach them to think differently. To fight in ways that even we do not fully understand. It sounds insane." "Good," Captain Bennett said. "If it sounds insane to us, it will sound impossible to machines area move to a communication console. I am calling for volunteers. Pilots who are willing to try something completely new." "Princess, I have not authorized this," General Corthan said. "Then authorize it, General. Because what we are doing now is not working." Jake watched the tactical display as more red dots disappeared, representing Zephyrian ships being destroyed. In less than 2 hours, those machines would reach the planet and begin consuming every living thing on it. "All right," General Corthan said finally. "Try your insane human tactics. But if this fails, we are all dead anyway," Jake said. "So let us try to succeed." Arya was already at the communications console speaking rapidly in Zephyrian. On the display, Jake could see several dozen ships breaking away from the main formation. The volunteer pilots arrived at the command center within 20 minutes. Jake had never seen so many Zephyrians in one place before. Their skin colors showed their emotions clearly. Some were bright with excitement, others pale with fear, and a few flickered between different colors as they struggled with uncertainty. "Listen carefully," Jake told the group through the translation system. "Everything you have learned about flying in formation, forget it. Everything you know about following orders exactly, forget that too. Today you need to think like humans." A young pilot raised her hand. "How do humans think?" "Badly," Jake said with a small smile. "We make mistakes. We change our minds. We do things that do not make sense even to ourselves." The pilots looked confused. Captain Bennett stepped forward to help explain. "What Jake means is that humans are unpredictable," she said. "When we face an enemy, we do not always do the smart thing or the logical thing. Sometimes we do the crazy thing just because no one expects it." Dr. Foster pulled up some files on her portable computer. "I have combat recordings from human military history. Let me show you some examples." For the next 30 minutes, the group watched videos of human battles. Fighter pilots breaking formation to chase single targets. Ships attacking much larger enemies instead of retreating. Soldiers making decisions based on instinct rather than training. "This looks like chaos," one of the pilots said. "Exactly," Jake replied. "And that chaos is our greatest strength. Machines can predict logical behavior. They cannot predict illogical behavior." Arya had been studying the tactical displays while Jake spoke to the pilots. "The Void Reapers have established a pattern," she announced. "They approach in groups of 12, use coordinated attacks to overwhelm single targets, then regroup and repeat. It is very efficient. So we need to be very inefficient," Jake said. "We need to do things that waste energy, ignore targets, and break every rule of good tactics." Tracy Wells, one of the human pilots who had come with them, volunteered to demonstrate. "I will fly with one of your pilots and show them what human flying looks like." A Zephyrian pilot named Keseta volunteered to partner with Tracy. They took 2 small fighters and launched from the station. Jake watched on the display as they flew toward a group of Void Reaper ships. "Watch this," Tracy said over the radio. Instead of attacking the nearest enemy, she flew past it completely and attacked a ship much further away. The Void Reapers had been moving to defend against an attack on the first ship, so the distant ship was completely unprotected. "But that wasted so much fuel," Keseta said in confusion. "Exactly. No logical fighter would waste fuel like that, so the machines did not expect it. They tried several more approaches. Tracy taught Keseta to change direction randomly, to attack and then retreat for no reason, and to ignore damaged enemies in favor of undamaged ones. "This feels wrong," Keseta said. "Good. If it feels wrong to you, it will seem impossible to the machines." Other human crew members worked with different groups of pilots. Danny Sullivan, one of their engineers, taught Zephyrian pilots how to modify their ships in ways that were technically inefficient, but tactically unpredictable. "Remove the automatic targeting system," he explained. "Let the pilot aim manually. Humans are worse at aiming than computers, but humans can aim at things that do not make sense to aim at." Katie Rodriguez, their best pilot, worked with a group on formation flying. But instead of the perfect geometric formations that Zephyrians preferred, she taught them to fly in loose, constantly changing groups. "Stay close enough to help each other, But far enough apart that you can all do something different, she explained. And never ever fly where your wingman expects you to fly. Jake worked directly with Arya, teaching her the most important human principle of all. Trust your instincts, he said. Not your training, not your logic, not your battle plans. If something feels right in the moment, do it, even if you cannot explain why. But what if my instincts are wrong? Arya asked. Then you will make a mistake. But machines cannot predict mistakes the way they can predict correct decisions. While they trained, the Void Reapers continued their approach. They had destroyed the outer defense fleet completely, and were now only 30 minutes from the planet. It is time, General Corthan announced grimly. All remaining ships prepare for final defense of the homeworld. Wait, Jake said. Let our volunteers try first. If traditional tactics have already failed, what do you have to lose? The general looked at the tactical display. The Void Reapers were arranged in their efficient formation, moving steadily toward the planet. His own remaining ships were in defensive positions around key cities and orbital installations. Very well, he said. But if this fails quickly, I'm ordering a retreat to the underground shelters. Jake nodded. Understood. Arya, are you ready? As ready as I can be to do everything wrong, she replied. Her skin was shifting through multiple colors rapidly. Fear, excitement, determination, and something else Jake could not identify. The volunteer squadron launched from the station. Jake watched on the tactical display as 47 Zephyrian ships flew toward 300 Void Reaper vessels. The odds were impossible, but Jake had learned that humans often did their best work when the odds were impossible. Remember, he broadcast to all the pilots, do not think. Just react. Trust your instincts even when they seem crazy. The first contact came as the volunteers reached the edge of the Void Reaper formation. Jake expected to see the coordinated attack patterns that had destroyed the regular Zephyrian fleet. Instead, he saw chaos. Arya led her group in what looked like a completely random attack. Instead of focusing fire on the nearest enemies, they scattered in all directions and attacked targets all across the Void Reaper formation. Some pilots flew straight at the largest ships and then veered away at the last second. Others attacked small ships while ignoring bigger threats right next to them. The Void Reapers tried to respond with their usual coordinated defense. But their coordinated defense was designed to counter coordinated attacks. When faced with pilots who attacked randomly and retreated randomly, their coordination became a weakness. They are trying to predict our movements, Kesta reported over the radio. But I do not know what I am going to do next, so how can they? Tracy laughed over the radio. That is the point. You are fighting on pure instinct now. The volunteers began scoring hits on Void Reaper ships. More importantly, they were disrupting the machine formation. The Void Reapers kept repositioning to counter attacks that never came, or to defend positions that the humans and Zephyrians had already abandoned. This is working, Dr. Foster said with amazement. The machines cannot adapt to truly random behavior. But Jake knew they needed more than just random attacks. They needed something that would give them a real advantage. Arya, he called over the radio. Remember what I told you about human music? How it is different from Zephyrian music? Yes, she replied while dodging enemy fire. Human music has irregular rhythms and unexpected changes. Exactly. Try flying to music. Let the rhythm of human music control your movements instead of military logic. Jake quickly sent audio files to all the volunteer pilots. Rock music, jazz, classical symphonies, electronic dance music, anything with complex, unpredictable rhythms. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Zephyrian pilots began flying in patterns that no military academy had ever taught. They accelerated and decelerated with the beat, turned with the melody, and attacked during musical crescendos. The Void Reapers were completely confused. Their sensors could detect the electromagnetic patterns of the music, but they could not understand how organic beings were using random sound patterns to control military movements. The enemy formation is breaking apart, the tactical officer reported with shock. They are pulling back to regroup. For the first time since the battle began, the Void Reapers were the ones retreating. All pilots, excellent work, Jake broadcast. But this is just the beginning. They will adapt to our music tactics eventually. We need to keep changing, keep being unpredictable. Katie Rodriguez had an idea. What if we let the Void Reapers think they have figured us out, then change everything again? How do you mean? Arya asked. Fly to music for a few more minutes, let them start to analyze the pattern. then suddenly switched to something completely different. Jake smiled. This was exactly the kind of thinking that made humans dangerous opponents. What did you have in mind? He asked. Poetry, Katie said. Let poets control our battle tactics. It was the most ridiculous military strategy Jake had ever heard. It was also the most human. Do it, he said. Danny Sullivan quickly uploaded text files of human poetry to the volunteer ships. Shakespeare, Maya Angelou, Robert Frost, Emily Dickinson. Dozens of poets whose words had moved human hearts for centuries. The pilots began reading poetry aloud as they flew, letting the rhythm of words guide their movements instead of the rhythm of music. Some read love poems while attacking enemy ships. Others recited epic verses while performing evasive maneuvers. The Void Reapers, which had been starting to adapt to the musical patterns, were once again completely confused. They could detect the verbal communications, but they could not understand how ancient human poetry was being used as a tactical system. Enemy ships are actually slowing down, the sensor officer reported. The battle raged for another 2 hours. The volunteer pilots, flying to the rhythms of human poetry and music, continued to confuse and damage the Void Reaper fleet. But Jake could see on the tactical display that it was not enough. The machines were slowly adapting even to poetry, and there were still too many of them. We need something bigger, Jake said to Captain Bennett. One final strategy that will end this. What do you have in mind? She asked. Jake studied the movement patterns of the Void Reaper ships. They were still trying to form efficient attack formations, but the random human tactics kept disrupting them. That gave him an idea. What if we could use their efficiency against them, he said. Make them so focused on coordination that they cannot react to a simple, direct attack. Dr. Foster looked up from her computer. How would that work? Give them something incredibly complex to analyze. Something so chaotic that their computers spend all their processing power trying to understand it, leaving them vulnerable to a conventional attack. Jake opened a communication channel to all the volunteer pilots. Everyone listen carefully. We are going to try something that might be completely insane. More insane than poetry combat? Kesta asked. Much more insane. I want every pilot to do something completely different. Tracy, I want you to fly in perfect military formation. Katie, I want you to attack in a straight line. Arya, I want you to follow Zephyrian combat doctrine exactly. But Jake, Arya said, those are the tactics that failed before. Exactly. While half of you do predictable things, the other half will do the most unpredictable things you can imagine. The machines will not know which pattern to focus on. Captain Bennett caught on immediately. You are going to overload their analysis systems by giving them too many different patterns at once. Right. And while they are trying to process all that information, General Corthan can hit them with a conventional attack from his remaining ships. General Corthan looked skeptical. You want me to attack while my pilots are scattered all over the battlefield? Trust me, General. The machines will be too confused to mount an effective defense. Jake quickly organized the volunteers into different groups. One group would fly traditional Zephyrian formations. Another would follow human military doctrine. A third would continue with music and poetry tactics. The fourth group would do something completely new. They would try to fly like the crystal trees in the Garden District, moving organically and responding to each other without any central plan. This is the most complicated military strategy I have ever heard, General Corthan said. Good, Jake replied. If it is too complicated for us to fully understand, it will be impossible for machines to predict. The volunteers began their chaotic multi-pattern attack. Jake watched on the tactical display as groups of ships flew in perfect formation, while other groups moved like flocks of birds. Some pilots attacked to classical music while others followed ancient Zephyrian battle protocols. The effect on the Void Reapers was immediate and dramatic. Their ships began moving erratically, starting to respond to one pattern and then suddenly switching to counter a different pattern. Their coordination completely broke down as their computers tried to analyze dozens of different tactical approaches simultaneously. Now, General, Jake shouted. General Corthan ordered his remaining conventional fleet to attack. The Zephyrian ships, flying in their traditional formations, struck at the confused Void Reapers with devastating effect. The machines, overwhelmed by trying to process too much tactical data, could not mount an effective defense. Direct hit on the command ship, the tactical officer reported. Multiple enemy vessels are losing coordination. Arya's voice came over the radio, excited and breathless. Jake, it is working! The machines are fighting each other. They cannot decide which of our patterns to counter, so they are attacking in all directions. Jake watched in amazement as the Void Reaper fleet began to destroy itself. Ships that were programmed to work together perfectly were now getting in each other's way, their coordination algorithms hopelessly confused by the multiple contradictory patterns they were trying to analyze. All pilots, focus fire on the largest ships, General Corthan ordered. Drive them away from the planet. The combined human-Zephyrian force pressed their advantage. The volunteer pilots continued their chaotic tactics while the conventional fleet attacked with disciplined precision. Caught between order and chaos, the Void Reaper fleet could not respond effectively to either threat. One by one, the machine ships began to retreat. Those that did not retreat were destroyed by the combined fleet. Within an hour, the sky around the planet was clear. Enemy fleet is withdrawing from the system, the sensor officer reported. We have won. Cheers erupted throughout the command center. Zephyrian officers embraced each other, their skin flashing bright colors of joy and relief. Captain Bennett hugged Dr. Foster, and even General Corthan allowed himself a small smile. Jake felt exhausted but elated. They had done it. Humans and Zephyrians working together had defeated an enemy that neither could have faced alone. All pilots, return to base, he broadcast. Excellent work, everyone. As the volunteer ships returned to the station, Jake noticed that they were not flying in any particular formation. Human and Zephyrian pilots were mixed together, following no pattern except staying close to friends they had made during the battle. Princess Arya was among the last to dock. When she stepped out of her fighter, her skin was bright white blue with happiness and exhaustion. She walked straight to Jake and, without any regard for royal protocol, hugged him tightly. We did it, she said. Your crazy human ideas actually worked. Our ideas, Jake corrected. Human creativity and Zephyrian courage. Either of us could have won alone. General Corthan approached them, his expression humble. Officer Morrison, I owe you an apology. Your tactics were unconventional, but they saved our world. Thank you, General. But the real heroes are the pilots who trusted human craziness enough to try it. Over the following days, news of the victory spread throughout Zephyrian space. The story of how humans and Zephyrians had defeated the Void Reapers using poetry and music became legendary. More importantly, it changed how Zephyrians thought about humans and about themselves. Ambassador Veltar called a formal meeting with the human delegation. Captain Bennett, the Emperor has asked me to make an official request. Zephyr Prime would like to establish a permanent alliance with Earth. We would be honored, Captain Bennett replied. Furthermore, we would like to propose a joint research station where our species can continue to learn from each other. We have realized that our different approaches to problems make us stronger together. Jake felt a warm sense of satisfaction. This was what first contact should be, not just meeting aliens, but becoming friends with them. There is one more thing, Ambassador Veltar continued. Princess Ariath has requested permission to lead the Zephyrian side of this cultural exchange. The Emperor has agreed, on the condition that she works closely with a human counterpart. Everyone looked at Jake. He felt his face getting warm. Would you be willing to serve as the human liaison officer? Captain Bennett asked him. Jake looked at Arya, who was trying very hard to look official and diplomatic. But her skin was cycling through happy colors, and she could not quite hide her smile. I would be honored, Jake said. 6 months later, Jake stood in the observation deck of the new joint research station that orbited between Earth and Zephyr Prime. Through the windows, he could see ships from both civilizations working together, human crews learning to grow crystal technology, Zephyrian scientists studying human art and music, engineers from both species developing new innovations that neither could have created alone. Arya joined him at the window. She wore clothes that were a mixture of human and Zephyrian styles, and her skin showed the contented blue-green color that Jake had learned meant deep happiness. The first Earth ship will arrive next week, she said. I am excited to meet more humans. They will love you, Jake said. Just like I do. The words slipped out before he could stop them. They had been dancing around their feelings for months, staying professional during official duties but growing closer every day. Arya turned to look at him, her skin shifting to a warm gold color. Do you remember, she said, when I asked you why you were staring at me? I remember. I said you were gorgeous. Do you still think so? Jake looked at her. This amazing alien princess who had become his best friend. His partner in bridging two worlds, and somewhere along the way, the person he cared about most in the universe. I think you are the most beautiful being I have ever known, he said, but not just because of how you look. Because of your courage, your curiosity, your willingness to trust a strange human with crazy ideas. Arya smiled, her skin brightening to pure silver with happiness. And I think you are remarkable, she said. You showed my people that being different is not something to fear, but something to celebrate. They stood together watching the ships outside, human and Zephyrian crews working side by side. Jake thought about how much had changed since that first day when he had stared at an alien princess and told her she was gorgeous. What are you thinking about? Arya asked. I am thinking that honesty really is the best policy, Jake said. If I had not been honest that first day, none of